Hi, Moonish. Thank you so much for being a part of this. My name is Neha, and I head the Customer Success Academy for AntWalk. Right? Why don't we just start with you telling us something about yourself, your life? What should we really talk about? Like everybody knows you, right? So, what is it that you would want to tell everybody about yourself?
I think that's a question that's going to expand over many years, but I'll keep it quite short. So look, I come from a very simple beginning. My mother and father were school teachers, retired school principals. I grew up in a town called Shimla, which is in the Himalayas, and that's where I get my love for the mountains. And I think I'm talking about a time when there was no internet. I'm talking about a time where the only mode of communication and getting information was either the newspaper or the national television, right? So that was where I came from, and I think my life has been a lot about change. The first change for me was, leaving Shimla and coming to Mumbai, and that's why I made a reference to the times when there was no internet. So it was a massive change because you were pretty much living in a box. And then as I see my life beyond that has been all about unlearning and learning, and it's been about change, right? So from hotel management to airlines, to brokerage, to insurance and other banking, right? So I've enjoyed the varieties life has thrown at me, and I've done some soul searching, and I've worked with a few coaches on figuring out my purpose in life as well. So I'm on my own journey, and I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Great. That's one awesome journey. Very inspiring on that. My first question, I think, would be around the kind of journey that you've had professionally, right? You just mentioned the kind of industries and the number of industries that you've worked with. What are some of your key takeaways when you do so many changes, and what have you learned in that journey?
That's a great question. So, this reminds me of a time when I was invited for a floor walk, like a floor address, and I was supposed to speak with 200-300 employees, and I was walking to the operating floor. I was thinking about what am I going to tell the individual, and then I came up with this thing called the GPS. Right now, as we all know, GPS is something that we use in our daily lives to find direction, right, or to find a way to a certain destination that we want to get. And then I was thinking that if you really want to find your bearings at work, and if you really want to figure out where you're going in your career, right? So I came up with GPS, and what it really stands for is G is for genuineness. How do you approach things with a lot of authenticity and genuinely where you want to make an impact, and an impact for the outcome you want to drive, an impact for the customers, an impact for the people. Right. So G for genuineness, and when you approach something very genuinely, it automatically fuels a lot of passion, right? So that's the P that came in, and the S is simply for simplicity.
Right.
Everything we tend to make things very complex, right? So when you think about life from a lens of simplicity and solving problems from a lens of simplicity, it kind of comes together. So that was one message that I had, for the group, for GPS, and using this mantra for finding your way and for having somebody to shine the torch for you. See, the other thing I want to tell you is, all our lives, we have certain realizations, and it's important that we act on those realizations. So I'll tell you two incidents. Incident one, I'm maybe early 20s. I'm standing at a bus stop, and I'm waiting for a bus. And I was waiting for a very long time. And I was in my dream world that one day I will make a living, I will succeed, and I will have a car, and I will not have to wait at the bus stop. And then I was in my dream world. And then I just turned my head, and I saw a man who was maybe double my age, 2x my age. And I was like, what if I am the same man 25 years down the line? And this man would have had the same aspiration, the same dreams 25 years back, but he's still at the bus stop, right? Yeah. And I did not want to be at the bus stop, right? So I think that was one big change. That the realization was that, yeah, it's great to have intent, but it's equally important to convert that intent to action.
Right.
And the second thing I tell you is, as I meet a lot of team members, people, and every time I walk into a room and I ask people, like young set of people, or people who are just beginning to start their career, the question is, how many of you want to be successful? And everybody is, because everybody wants to be successful. But at that age, when you're very young, right, you have the entire aspiration and the ambition, and you believe that it will come to you. right? But then there are people who do not work hard enough to get to the aspiration and ambition. So having aspiration and ambition is great, but making sure that you're putting the effort. The first point about converting the intent into action, I think that's really, really important. So I think those have been the learnings, and I think you've got to be a very good leader as you go through this, right? And if you want to build a career, then you've got to make sure that you're building a team that's better than you, because you're going to be a sum total of your entire team, right? So there are many facets, but these are some of the quick realizations that can the top of my mind, right? So two things. One, I want to tell you that, I've been wanting to write a book on genuineness, and I've been working to it. I do need to convert the intent into action. And the interesting part about that is I want to write half of it, and the half of it I want to invite people to write it. So let's say I give you this offer to say, if you have a perspective, first you'll have a perspective on, what is being genuine and how do you use it in day-to-day. So then you can come in and join me. And I'm serious.
Okay, thank you.
So that's one. And two, look, the reason, so the question is, how do I use it in my day-to-day life? So the point is that think about our lives and think about our work life. We spend 6 to 7 hours sleeping. Of course, there are people who sleep more and sleep less, but let's say 6-7 hours. You are almost spending 9 to 10 hours in office.
Right.
And let's say add 1 hour each to the commute. So 12 hours are just gone at work and commuting. 7 hours are gone sleeping. Or 6 hours are gone sleeping. 18. You're left with 6 hours of family time. Absolutely. How much time are you really spending in the office? You're spending 10 hours. That means you're spending far more time with the people in the office.
Right.
And it cannot be a transactional relationship with those individuals. So being genuine is about being genuinely invested in their careers, in their dreams and aspirations, and supporting them as well. Right? So, for example, look at a doctor-patient relationship. And I have a lot of family members who are doctors. I just want to put that on the record. But look, a doctor-patient relationship is essentially the doctor will write a prescription, and it's up to the patient to consume it or not.
Yeah.
And look at a mother and child relationship. Right? The mother will make sure that the child consumes the medicine, right? Whichever way. So I think a lot of our relationships at work have to transcend into that, where we have to take accountability for our people the same way we would take accountability for our own family members, for our children, for our nephews, nieces, cousins, whoever. Right? So when you see somebody at work who's getting a massively great opportunity, for example, when I had a job, I worked there for 3 years, and when I told my boss that I'm going to quit and do my MBA, he shook my hand and he said, yeah, you should, right? Because he chose me over the job, right? And people are going to be far more important than the jobs that they do. And we have to obviously balance the outcomes you want to write for the organization and obviously the outcomes you write for the people. But if it comes to a choice of, what's right for the people, we always have to choose what's right for the people, as long as, we're protecting the outcome, what's right for the all. So I think that's one way of, how you can be genuine. And two is, you got to take responsibility, like I said. So, for example, when I moved from Shimla to Mumbai, I know that I had somebody mentoring me, and I've had a lot of coaches who mentor me, right? So you have to be the mentor. You have to shine the torch for the individuals, and you have to help them get on the path. And for some who are on the path, you have to help them get to the destination faster, or in a far more easier manner, right? So I think there are a variety of ways you could just use the trait of being genuine, to impact your people. And again, when you talk to your customer, the more authentic you are, the more straightforward you are, the more transparent you are. Right? It just helps you solve many problems. Right? So I think that's a little bit of perspective on how you could use genuineness as a trait to impact lives positively, both personally and professionally. I work for a company called Genpact. And we are 125,000 people. It's a large organization. We are very globally distributed. And I run the operations for the banking and capital markets. So I have a team of about 25,000 people. And I have team members right from Australia, China, Philippines, of course, India, UK, Europe, and the Americas. And like I said, I'm a function of my team. I'm going to be as good as my team. I don't think it's a challenge. I think it's an opportunity. And the reason I say that is because, you are really harnessing the collective power of all individuals. Now, I think when you run global teams, there are a few things that will help individuals, manage those global teams. So one is inclusion. You've got to have a sense of inclusion, and you have to. And inclusion means, let's just come back. Inclusion means that you're not just looking at the operating team, but you bring in the quality, compliance, IT, finance, all you bring HR, you bring all the functions together.
Right.
Because when you bring the entire functions together, and then you bring the other geography leaders together, right? The power of diversity gets. Because when the same set of people are trying to solve a problem, they're going to come up with similar solution. But when you have an operating issue, and you have somebody from HR country, or you have somebody from a different geography country, you tend to get very different solutions. And I believe that that's really, really helpful. I think the other thing is you got to be very mindful that you work in this multi-country environment. So there are different time zones, there are different cultures. Right? So adjusting and being mindful about people's balance or work-life balance, right? So you have to kind of accommodate to that. And 3 is, I think you've got to take this as something that makes you a better individual and makes you a more informed individual. Because, for example, I was recently in China. I was in China just about last week, my first trip. I loved being in China. And I think the week before that, I was in the UK, right? So I do end up traveling. And I think it's so important for my own learning. Go and meet different people, understand different cultures. I think it's an opportunity. Yes, not a challenge. I don't remember the name of the book. I don't remember what he was. But I remember one line from that. And the one line from that book was, human beings remain human beings. No matter which country, no matter which continent they are in, kind of same, right? No matter where you go in the world. All human beings, we all love, we all aspire, we all dream, we have ambition, we hurt, we cry, right? And we dream. At one level, we all the same. Right? When you think of it, there is a commonality, huge commonality in the entire world. When you pick up the phone, everybody says how, right? And we all have breakfast. We all read stories to our children at bedtime. So the point I'm making is, at one level, we are all unified. We are all the same. So let me say, I'm going to make it a template saying it. I hope it's easy for the audience to understand. So look, it takes time for you to get your gray hair, or it takes time for you to lose your hair, right? So some things come with time. That's one point. And the second point I'm going to make is that you don't have to get to a particular point to realize you can learn from others, right? So these are two different dimensions of what I'm painting, right? But look, we've all been through that. We all go through that journey of. I still end up putting long hours when it's needed. But over a period of time, I think you've got to do some soul searching, saying what is important to you. And for me, there were days when months I was working for much longer time in the office, and my boss was not telling me to work longer. Right? These are decisions we take on our own self. And then, there are certain things that you come by, you meet certain people, and they have an influence in your life. Now, that influence from those individuals may be a particular influence. So, for example, when I was in Mumbai, moved to Hyderabad. In Hyderabad, I met some friends or people who were in the place. So I got into squash. Then when I moved to Delhi, this was like long back, I met certain people who were into cycling. So I got into cycling, right? So when you meet different people, right, then you tend to adopt new things, right? So I think my journey started there, and then I ended up doing this trek called the Chadar trek. It's essentially, if there are listeners outside India, it's a region which is in the most southern part of India, and there's a river there called River Zanskar, which freezes in the winters. Right. And there was an 8-day trek, and you walk on the frozen river for about 8 days up and down to stay by the riverside, and the temperature was minus 30 and minus 40 degrees centigrade. It's very extreme. Right, and when I came back from that, I think when you do things, so our mind, we end up using only 15% of our mind capacity. And every time you do certain things that you don't do on a day-to-day basis, right, it opens up new doors, it opens up new dimensions, right? For example, if I, let's say, learn how to play a guitar, which I want to, I think it's going to open up a different dimension. Life is all about exploration. Right. So that change was all about, how do you get more balance in life? But I think I got that balance thing from there. So I think, I think it's Charlie Chaplin is the busiest of men, and in the more, work world, you should say, the busiest of human beings. not men. Busier human beings have the maximum time. But think of a lazy Saturday. You could go through the entire day and not do anything. And think about a day when you have so many things to do and you get through many, right? So I think it's all about making that conscious choice to incorporate that into your calendar. So for example, my lunch would be in the calendar. My gym time would be in the calendar. Me and my wife, we go out, every Wednesday. That time is good for us. It's kind of locked in the calendar, right? My reading time or focus time is locked in the calendar. And of course, you end up making compromises. But you are in control and you need to be in control. And there is something that each individual needs to realize, right? And we know what's the right thing for us. But the more you spend yourself at work and you do not indulge or make the time to do other things, I think you're just limiting yourself. Every time I ask a question or challenge, I always think it's an opportunity, right? And look, I think there are two sides, or there are 2 points should be answered. One point is, what is the organization doing to the capability, right? So we were founded by Gene in 1997, and we were set up as a test site for Lean and Six Sigma. So Lean and Six Sigma was typically in the manufacturing sector. So this is the first time it was tested in the services sector. And so our DNA was, so we spent a lot of time, coaching and training our people on Lean and Six Sigma. For example, I'm a Green Belt, a Green Belt certified. After Lean, after Lean Six Sigma came the digital era, where the RPA, robotics came in. So we had to upskill all our people now. Now we're talking about AI, right? So right now there's absolutely capability we're driving. There's a program called Tech Bridge, where we are enabling 100,000 people to get trained on technology, right? Whether it's the cloud or it's on artificial intelligence, etc. And then just before this, we had a program called Adaptability. This is where we enabled 80,000 or 100,000 people to get comfortable with data analytics, right? And when you do that, then the magic happens, because then people not only do their jobs, but they look at applying analytics in their operations, and they come up with deep and meaningful insights that can help drive key customer outcomes. So that's one part on what the organization is doing. And by the way, we have something called Genome. So Genome is our platform for learning. So way back in time, right? I'm sure that we've all gone for presentation skills training, time management, customer skills. Those are all classroom-led training. Even the 7 habits are highly effective. Now, I think what's happened is, and this happened much before the COVID period as well, right? So we have this platform where we're encouraging people to self-learn. And then based on persona, based on, which role you are in, if you're in operations or HR or training or sales, there are learning paths for you. And the learning paths are based on domain or storytelling, executive presence, or they could be many. So, and then we encourage people to do that. And then that has a path into the promotions as well. Right? So we've kind of linked it to career growth. Right? So that's one part around with the organization. Right? And the second part is, how do you get people to really not do this because the organization is doing it, but how do you get them to do it because it's so imperative for their success? So I think it's all about that change. So we do, from time to time, we do a lot of success stories. We bring individuals to come and talk to the floors to say, here is the individual, who went out and did an MBA through distance learning or through the programs we facilitate at Genpact. Or here is an individual who upskilled himself or herself on a certain. Right? So I think that's the change we need to drive, and that goes back to the point around, how do we enable individuals and how do we help them then, right? So I think the challenge is more about, waking up the spirit in people. And look, our values at Genpact, one of our values is curiosity. So we over-index on curiosity. We want people to be curious. We want people to learn, right? And we want people to be incisive. And incisiveness will come, when you're curious, right? So that's how it kind of works at Genpact. So the first thing I would tell them is, don't set ceilings for yourself. You can be who you want to be. And you are a function of your own grit. You are a function of your determination. You're not a function of, people around you. Right? So you need to cut to the platter. To take accountability for yourself and for your careers, and don't attribute your success to somebody. And the third thing I would say is, don't convert your intent into action. We spoke about it, right? If you walk into a room, you ask how many of you want to be successful. At that age, everybody believes they will be successful, but then put in the effort, and you have. I'll give you another incident that happened. Again, all in my head. So I was in our Delhi office I think this is like almost 15 or 20 years back.
Okay.
I'm maybe not 20, so 10, 12 years back. And I was parked outside the main gate. And there were a set of construction workers who were sitting on the other side of the road.
Okay.
And these construction workers were looking at the people who were going in and going out. And I kind of felt that these construction workers wanted to be those people. They wanted to be those people who were smartly dressed, they were wearing the office ID card, and they would go work in a nice environment, right? And they would do something that these guys would aspire to. Right? So that's scene one in my head. Scene two, I go in and I met a set of managers. And some of those managers were not really happy. And they were calling out in terms of how they were limited by XYZ. And then this is a story narrated of them, that those construction workers want to be you, but they can never be you. Because their parents and their family members could not invest the time, or they didn't have the resources to send them. And of course, all those construction workers would end up being big contractor home builders, and they would be successful too. Right? So I'm not just saying success is only on the back of editing, but then not everybody would. And message to the group was, you are so privileged, right? Your parents have sent you to schools, colleges. You are here in this place, and the entire world isn't, right? And that's my point on, you could be whoever you want to be. And we spoke about in just before this question, that you have to be an ongoing learner.
Yeah.
You have to be a learner for life. And there is this phrase, right? The illiterate of today is not the person who can't read and write. The illiterate of today is the person who can't learn and learn, right? And learn, right? So I think be a learner for life.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Moonish. I think it was such a pleasure talking to you. It's a breath of fresh air to learn so much from you. Thank you so much for being a part of this from AntWalk and from myself.